Hello and welcome to Credit Versio's Q&A Wednesday live for March 30th. I am your host, David Michalek. I'm a consumer credit expert with nearly 10 years of experience. And during that time, I've conducted well over 10,000 one-on-one credit consultations, which have resulted in over 1 million disputes and tens of thousands of inaccurate accounts being deleted from credit reports. And I'm very much looking forward to sharing with you what I've learned over those years on our weekly Q&A calls that we do every Wednesday on both Facebook and YouTube. So thank you so much for joining me today. And if you haven't heard me say this before, one of the most important things I lead off with always is that our credit report and scores play an enormous role in so many areas of our lives. Our insurance companies, landlord, mortgage broker, bank, even our employers are looking at our credit report to see how we honor our obligations. Having great credit is not an option anymore. It's mandatory because credit reports are no longer just credit reports. They've become more than that. They become our adult report cards. They've become our reputation reports, as some people call them. And they tell the story of what we do when we're entrusted with credit. And that's why we do these weekly live Q&A sessions. So thank you so much for being with me today. If you're new, please let me know. Thank you so much for joining me. I know we've got our regulars that like to join in. I'm very grateful for that. I'd like to cover a lot of topics for the week. So just to lay out some format for today, typically this is what I do. I like to cover kind of the hot topics of the week, the questions that we get the most inside customer service, also on Facebook and YouTube. And then it's all open. Whatever you want to ask me about credit repair, scores, credit Versio, it's all up to you. So feel free to ask some specific questions about your situation. Happy to answer those for you. Before we get started, got some really cool news, very exciting news. I've been doing this for a long time. I've been invited to speak at mortgage seminars, financial planners explaining credit, because credit still is, even though I think that the knowledge is increasing and people are becoming more aware of how important credit is, it's still a little nebulous. It's still a little out there, and very happy to see that some very important people in politics are advocating for credit education at the high school level, which is, I think, imagine what our lives would have been like if we would have had credit education in high school. I don't know about you, but I can think of a ton of mistakes that I probably would not have made. But going back to what I was saying a second ago, I've been honored to speak at a lot of places, but this week I had the honor of being interviewed by CNN. That's a first for me. And not just anybody at CNN. It was a woman by the name of America Arias, a two-time Emmy Award winner, and reached out because of the topic that John and I did last week, if you were with us, talking about how the bureaus have made an incredible change in the way that they're going to be reporting medical debt. So I spent a few minutes talking about that. And one of the other questions that she asked me, or one of the other mini assignments she gave me, is to give a couple of tips for better credit in 2022. And I want to talk about that too, because there's a couple of things I had to think about it, because there's a lot of things you can do. There's a lot of things I thought of. But I'm like, okay, this is CNN. It's going to be on their financial page. What are some of the best things that I can give people who want to improve their credit for 2022. And I'll get to that in a second. But first of all, I want to say hello to everybody. Derek, welcome. Good to see you. Brian, start off with a question. How to remove credit inquiries. I have 14 to remove. Brian, so inquiries are one of those things that everybody gets very excited about, but they typically have very little to no effect on credit reports. And I know that's contrary to what everybody believes. And a lot of that comes from what's called the adverse action letter, that if you've ever been declined for credit, I have been many times before in my past, at the bottom, they have to tell you exactly why you were declined for credit. Now, even if on the out chance that an inquiry might have lowered your score by maybe 1 point, they have to add that there. So what's happened over years is, whoever's bright idea that was, who knows? But what's happened over the years is virtually every adverse action letter or denial letter has a spot on it that says too many inquiries, when that is probably the most unimportant aspect of your credit. So just so you know, inquiries exist for FICO anyway in that section that makes up 10% of your score. Now that doesn't mean that inquiries are 10% of your score. They certainly are not, but they're in that category. And while it is true that inquiries might affect your score, it is not true that they always do. So to answer your question, was it Brian? Yes, Brian. You can dispute them if you want, but generally speaking, it's really not worth the time and effort and energy because, first of all, if all of your inquiries came in within a very short period of time, like 45 days, FICO does something called deduping, which means it looks at all of those inquiries and counts them as one. So, for example, if you went to a car dealership and they ran your application all over town to get you the best deal, which, by the way, that's very common. Let's say you got 8, 9 inquiries. That's one inquiry, not to worry. Also, FICO and Vantage Score both don't care about inquiries once they reach the 12-month mark. So while it's true, you can see inquiries on your credit report. I mean, they're there cosmetically for 12 months, but those last 12 months, they don't really play much of a role. But to answer your question, you can dispute them if you want. That's the only way to dispute anything or get anything removed is to dispute it. So Credit Versio will guide you through the process. I don't recommend disputing them more than twice because either they're going to come off on the first 2 rounds or they're not. And if they're not, don't worry about it. You people who are trying to fix their credit, build their credit, you've got bigger fish to fry. Don't get obsessed with inquiries. Okay, let's see. Derek's got a question, and I'm going to get to my little talk with CNN. I checked my credit report today, and I have 0 collections on my TransGender report. That's insane. I'm excited. Congratulations. I'm going to make the assumption that that's because of Credit Versio, but either way, that's awesome news, so congratulations. All right, let's see. On what says congratulations, Derek. Okay, let's see. Jake's got a question. Jake, you look like you might be new. I don't recognize your face. All right, question is, am I able to do my own credit repair with your system? Yeah, that's what we're all here for. All right, next part of the question. I have no experience looking to repair my own credit. Can I do this one more time? It just fell off. With your system without seeking help. Can I do this on my own? Jake, 100%. That's what Credit Versio was invented to do. So everybody here at Credit Versio, all of us that contribute to its creation, its growth, we all come from the credit repair space. My partners have been in it for almost as long as I have. I mean, very, very close. They built another company, crazy successful, and it helped hundreds of thousands of people do their credit. Now, it wasn't DIY, but what I'm saying is they have that pedigree. For 7.5 years before I came to Credit Versio, I was a VP of a very large credit repair company, full service, white glove. And the whole point for Credit Versio, because all of us collectively have thought, one day software should be able to do this. And it took a lot of work, a lot of brilliant development, which I will admit I don't understand. But when I look at it, I can tell it's magnificent. So since we launched, Jake, just to put a final couple of comments on this, since we launched in March of 2020, 150,000 people have created a Credit Versio account. About 55,000 people have gone through the entire process. So trust me, in that 50,000 plus, there were certainly people who could barely turn on a computer that did just fine. Having said that, if you have any questions, you can always reach out to us, but most people don't. We don't hear from 99% of our clients because Credit Versio does everything. It's full automation. It'll connect to your credit report. It'll bring it in. It'll guide you through the process. It has very, very easy tutorials that you watch, that you follow. It's simple, and it's going to do about 95% of the work for you. So, Jake, really all you have to do is really just got to pick the stuff that you want to choose, select the dispute reason, watch the tutorials, and you're on your way. You're not going to have any problem doing it. Okay, next question. Bronx Lee, I have a question regarding third-party disputes. I've recently used a credit repair company and received a letter saying they don't work with third party. Yep, that's right out of the Fair Credit Reporting Act. How do the bureaus know a dispute is from a third party, and do they still have to dispute them if they are? Bronx, that's a great question. Okay, Inside the Fair Credit Reporting Act, there's something that we refer to as Exception G. And what Exception G says, essentially, oh, you know what? I think I actually have it right here. Hold on. Let me see. Nope, that's not it. I used to have it on here. I want to show it to you because it's very, yeah, here it is, right here. Okay, G, exclusion of credit repair organizations. Okay, it's important to know where this exists in the Fair Credit Reporting Act. So essentially what the Fair Credit Reporting Act, it's a pretty substantial document. It's been revised about 18 times since it was written in 1970. But this part's always been there. And essentially what it says, after it drones on and on about, hey, if you receive a dispute, you got to do this. And you got to do it by this time. So it really spells out everything that credit bureaus and creditors / data furnishers have to do for consumer protection. This is your right if they receive a dispute from you. And then, after all that is said, there's Exception G, which says, oh, by the way, if you get a dispute letter that's either prepared or sent by a third party, credit repair company, you can just disregard it. Now, why would they do that? Well, they don't, there's a handful of reasons. I'll speculate here, but I think they just don't want people really gaming the system. It's important for accurate information to be on credit reports. And they know that credit repair companies can easily overwhelm the credit bureaus. I have a friend of mine, a couple of friends, and one of them has been on, actually both of them have been on here. Both John and Steve have been on here. And they both worked inside dispute resolution at the bureaus, and they have both said that 80 to 85% of the disputes they get potentially come from credit repair companies. So that's really what the FCRA was stating. So Bronxley, to answer your question, how do they tell? It's really easy. For example, if you live, say, in Florida and the bureaus get a dispute, but the postmark is from Salt Lake City or it's from Maryland, then they're like, well, wait a minute. How come Bronxley lives in Florida? How come his dispute letter's got a postmark from a state where he doesn't live? It's pretty easy to figure out. The other thing, too, is credit repair companies are notorious for using some really outdated methods that I think they include this, at least I can give from my perspective, having run a credit repair company, where they quote laws and they quote case law, and they say, if you don't do this, I'm going to do that. Well, people really don't write that way, but credit repair companies do. So I think that's another reason why, or another way that the bureaus are able to kind of pick off the ones that come from credit repair companies. Now, does that mean they're not going to conduct a dispute? They have the right to not conduct a dispute if they want to. A lot of times they do, because as one of my friends said who used to work at dispute resolution for TransUnion, he said, he goes, we can ignore it. It's our legal right, but what's going to happen? They're just going to send us another letter. So now we still have work to do. All right. So, but they might send a letter stating that, hey, we don't have to respond to this. This is prepared by a third party. Okay. Jake says, new here, been watching you for a bit. Welcome. Glad to have you. Deji, good to see you. Welcome back. Let's see. Tiffany's got a question. Should we dispute a certain number of accounts at once during round one, or can all derogatory accounts be disputed at once for round one? So Tiffany, two things. Number one, make sure you watch your tutorial videos because we cover this. Tutorial videos are really short. You're going to find, they're called your quick start videos. They're in the tutorial section. And we put those there because it's just going to guide you through the whole process and explain why, yes, you do want to include them all on one letter. Little bit of interesting trivia. You know where that comes from. You know why a lot of people think that, oh my gosh, if I do more than one or two disputes, I'm going to upset somebody. I'm going to draw attention to myself. There's going to be a red flag somewhere. That comes from the monthly fee credit repair industry. I'm not going to name any names, but I'm sure everybody watching knows who the big guys are in the monthly fee space. Now, what's interesting about monthly fee is, if you look at it for just 2 seconds, look at it as a business person. If I'm charging somebody a monthly fee, do I really want to be done with their credit repair in 3, 4, 5 months? Or do I want to drag this out as long as possible because I essentially have got a continuity program? And the answer is the latter. Let's drag this out as long as we can. We'll tell them we can only dispute 2 or 3 accounts a month because And I hope they're not making up stories like it's a bad thing, but I know that was used quite a bit in the past. So, Tiffany, nothing wrong with disputing everything at once. That's your legal right. Nowhere in the Fair Credit Reporting Act or anywhere does it say you're limited in how many accounts you can dispute. Think of it this way. What if you were a victim of identity theft and they opened up 20 accounts in your name before you figured out what happened? Does it sound reasonable? Like, oh, listen, you were a victim of fraud and identity theft, but you can only dispute 2 or 3 of these fraudulent accounts a month. No, that's not reasonable. Okay, but great question. I really appreciate it. All right. Anisha just signed up, and I think you meant to say so confident with your service. I'm confident too, and congratulations. We're happy to have you. Just follow the steps. Let me add this because we got some new people here. I want to throw this in there, and I know this isn't the tutorial videos, but this can't be said enough. One of the reasons why so many people who try to fix their own credit, and that's you too. If you're using Versio, this is DIY. The software is guiding you through the process, but this is you. You're picking the accounts. You are selecting the dispute reasons, even though Versio is going to do an awesome job of selecting dispute or suggesting dispute reasons for you. You're going to print the letters. You're going to mail them. They've got your postmark. It's got a live stamp on it. It's everything that the law wants. It's everything that credit repair was intended to be. It's you doing it. But so many people, outside of Versio, mind you, fail fixing their own credit because they do one dispute and they're like, ah, shoot, it didn't work. This didn't work. I got to, I quit. And that might be, I don't have any facts to back this up. This is an observation that I've made over almost a decade. And I can't tell you how many thousands upon thousands of clients that I have personally consulted. But I think what might happen is when you send a dispute letter, there's a lot of creditors that just might auto-respond with, hey, everything looks kosher to me. Everything has been verified as reporting accurately. That's actually the language you'll see in the response letter. Typically, that's in the part of the response from the credit bureau. And then people look at it and go, well, that's it. I guess I'm just stuck with this. But we have a saying in the credit repair industry that the dispute process really starts at round 2. It's your follow-up round. And when we look at people's accounts in Versio, we want to see the progression of success. We really see it. Now, granted, low-hanging fruit comes off round 1. It's very common. Paid collections, old stuff, things that clearly shouldn't be there, things that are wrong. That stuff is going to come off. But it's round 2 and round 3 and round 4. We even see things coming off in round 5. It's a strategic process. It's like a chess match in a way. You make a move, they respond. Versio scans a credit report, figures out what happened, looks for changes, even the most minute change, and then gives you a suggested reason. Or if you see something wrong, you can write your own custom dispute. So it's you doing the disputes, but stick with it. Give it at least 3-4 rounds. And if you're seeing success, congratulations. If you don't see success after 3-4 rounds, doesn't mean that the system didn't work. Didn't mean that there's anything wrong with Versio. It just means the data furnishers were able to come back and say, yeah, this stuff is reporting accurately. But the good news is at least you gave it a shot. You didn't spend a lot of money. You didn't spend hundreds of dollars on the credit repair company to come back and say, well, you know what, we took a swing, but we missed. So it's a win-win situation, but stick with it. Okay, let's see. On what? How can I get an AU, an authorized user? It's a very easy process. It's really up to you. What it was designed to do is to ask family or friends who have an established credit card that have credit that's 5-10 years old. What you're really looking for is you'd like to find somebody who's got a credit card, nothing derogatory in the history, does not run up balances, has a good limit, doesn't have to be a lot, but just doesn't have a high balance. And all of that history from those years will be added onto your credit report. Now, usually the follow-up question is, well, can I buy trade lines? Nothing wrong with it. Nothing illegal about it. Not something I'm a big advocate of doing, but people do it, and especially when they're getting ready to buy a home. In fact, I had one of the guys here that works in our support team come in and ask me yesterday, because he's got a friend that's trying to buy a home, limited credit. I think maybe one credit card, some student loans, not very established credit wise, and authorized user was the best way to go. The name is Anwar. Okay, great. All right, Joseph Weber, look who's back. All right, back. Sent a debt validation to collection agency asking for any accounts they have, and they sent me pages of medical bills. Every medical bill says this is not a bill. Okay, I don't know how to respond to that. Then after I asked for a list, they started sending bills to, hold on, sending bills to credit bureaus. No, that's not something they would do. They haven't given me a 30-day notice warning before they sent to the bureaus. Is that the law? Okay, is that a law? They must notify me or send, hold on a second here. 30 days to allow me to respond. Okay, so there's a couple things to unpack there, Joseph. First of all, what the law currently says is they've got to give you 6 months before they report anything to the credit bureaus. And by the way, that's going to change July 1st. It'll go from 6 months to 12 months. And that's one of the things that recently changed with the bureaus, or will change with the bureaus. So the answer is they should have given you 6 months, but they don't have to give you any additional time than that. That 30 days it's really more for typical collections. Medical collections are kind of a different animal altogether. That 30 days is usually a reinsertion, but I'm not sure if that's exactly what you're talking about. But did they notify you greater than 6 months ago? And the way to respond to it is, if these are not legitimate debts, if you don't owe them, or if you're still working with a healthcare insurance company, that's really how you want to settle this stuff, is let your health insurance company handle it, work with them. That's why that 6-month grace period is there. If they haven't notified you, then that's a different thing altogether. All right. Timothy Galloway says hello. Okay, great. So feel free to ask your questions as I'm going along here. So one of the things that one of my best tips, and it's been a while since I've talked about this, but when the reporter from CNN asked me, hey, can you give us 5 solid tips for better credit in 2022? And like I said earlier, I had to think about that for a second because there's a lot of things that I could say, but I wanted to look back on, well, how do people usually get themselves in a compromised credit situation? And one of the big ones is, this is more preventative, by the way. It's not really so much an action to improve credit. It's an action to avoid detrimental actions taking place to your credit report. And this is setting up auto pay. In fact, I don't know that I've ever even done a section on that except for in the coaching videos, but I haven't talked about it on this. Auto pay is one of the most important things you can do. As I mentioned a second ago, before I came to Credit Versio, I spent years and years doing credit consultations over the phone. And that involved talking to people about their credit, how do they get in the situation, looking at their credit report. And I can't tell you how many times I've had this conversation when somebody told me, well, it was fine, I just forgot to pay it. Forgot to pay the car payment, it's 30 days late, or sometimes they don't catch it until it's 60 days late. God forbid it's 90. Things change when you go from a 30-day late, a 60-day late is referred to as a minor derogatory. 90-day late is a major, and that's where things change. So now granted, most people typically catch when they forget to pay something right between the 30 and 60-day period. But let me tell you this story. I have a friend of mine years ago, a little bit, actually my age, maybe a little bit younger, had a heart attack at, probably 47, 48, and ended up in the hospital for an extended stay, as you would imagine. Running the business, lots of credit cards, lots of things juggling. Fortunately, the team he had really took care of things. But he had everything, he had the presence of mind to set all of his credit card payments on auto pay. What he did is, and anybody can do this, like I've got 4 or 5 credit cards, I can go in and set up auto pay on every single one of them. Essentially what that means is that regardless of what happens, before the payment date is due, as a default, If I don't pay it, it will make the minimum payment. It'll just draft it right out of my bank account. If you have in the off chance you have a card that doesn't have that feature, you can go into your bank and do bill pay and just set it up once a month for $25, $35, whatever your most common minimum payment typically is. And I can't tell you how many problems that would solve for people who had the money, didn't mean to not pay it, just, I don't know, life got in the way. And next thing you know, 30-day late payment, 60-day late payment. Even though those are minor derogatory accounts or minor derogatory marks on a credit report, nothing hurts your credit as much as something that's new. Because it's painting a picture, it's telling a story to FICO and VantageScore, who are assigned the task of representing who you are, what kind of a credit risk you are. And when they see things going 30 days late, maybe 60 days late, they're like, uh-oh, what's this guy doing? What's this girl doing? Are they going to default? Are they overextended? Who knows? But they have to represent that risk in your credit score. And that's why you start seeing credit scores starting to really tank when you start seeing derogatory things take place. Now, typically, the people with higher scores are the ones that get hit the hardest. Like if you're already in the 550s, 600s, and you get a late payment, yeah, okay, it's going to do some damage, but it's not going to really bring it down a lot because the scores are already in the kind of the lower area to begin with, an area that you want to get out of as soon as you can. It's those who have those low 800s, high 700s, mid 700s even that get that late payment. I can't tell you how many times I've seen a big drop in score and everybody kind of loses their mind. So let's avoid that altogether. Okay, when you get off this live, open up if you got credit cards. If you don't, that's an entirely different conversation. But let's assume that you do. Go into your app, set up your minimum monthly payment, and protect yourself. It's a little bit of advanced thought's going to really protect you. Okay, Mike, welcome back. Late to the game. Hello, good to see you. Glad to have you here. Okay, so covering autopay, it's a really, really big deal. The other thing that I highly recommend is getting rid of your nuisance balances. Not every time, but a lot of times that I have John Olsheimer on with me, we talk about great strategies. And this is one that I mentioned on the interview that I did on Monday, which is, well, what's another thing you can do? Well, first of all, pay off credit card debt. Okay, if you're doing credit repair, you're using Credit Versio, you've gone through the coaching videos, which I really recommend that you do. It's in the coaching videos course. It's in tutorials. It'll walk you through what you need to do. We all know about credit card debt, how credit cards are weighted, how much swing they can have on your credit scores. Now, in that section, it's 30% of your score. It's about 31% on VantageScore, but 30% of your score. Let's use the FICO chart as an example. This is the second largest section of your score. Okay, the largest is 35%, which is credit history. Can't do much about that except for the dispute process, of course. But 30% of your score is based on balances owed. Now, it doesn't mean that 30% of your score is your credit card utilization, but it's in that category, and it's a very big part of it. And one of the things that we get dinged on, one thing that represents uncommonly high risk is when you have lots of credit cards with little balances. It's better to have all of your transactions on one or maybe two credit cards. Now, granted, I know you can probably got the gas card, you might have that Macy's card, might have your Amazon card. I've got one of those too. And it's just best to pay those things off, not carry little balances. I've had a lot of consultations with people here at Credit Versio where they got some things deleted, and the next month, their credit score didn't move or it went down. And they're on the phone with us like, hey, can you figure out any idea what happened? And by the way, this is very easy to triage because, listen, it's always the same stuff most of the time. It's like it's 3 or 4 or 5 things at the most that it could possibly be. It's almost always the same explanation. Most of the time it has to do with credit card usage, to be quite frank. Either they overutilized credit cards, or they've got nuisance balances on a bunch of cards. And that's what it was. The month before, she had a balance on one, I think maybe two cards. And this month, she had balances on 7 cards. It might have been holiday season. I can't remember exactly what it was. But I said, oh, well, here's your problem. Yeah, you did a great job. You got some things deleted. But you had you're spooking FICO and Vantage Score because they see that you've got a lot of open balances, and that's a problem. Okay. Let's see. What is this? MR. Well, I can't say that. I imagine those are your initials or username. But yeah, if you have a question, you don't need to say I got a question or can I ask a question. Just post it up there. I'll get to it, and we'll dive into it. Okay. The other question that I've got, and I did touch on it a minute ago about dispute letters. So dispute letters. Here's one really important thing, and I'm not sure how long you've been with us. If you're brand new, then this is something that you're never going to experience. If you've been with Versio for a couple of months or so, you may have gotten a letter from TransUnion saying that we believe this is sent by a third party. Now, just like what I was talking about with, was that Brian? No, it wasn't Brian. Who was it? Bronx. Yes, Bronx. So what happened is, Versio is a big company. Probably the big, monthly fee credit repair companies, the ones that we know of that have the word law in them and .com in them, those are probably the only companies that send more letters to the bureaus than, and I'm not using this specifically, we don't send letters, our clients do. But the bureaus, when they see the same format of letter coming every time, they might accidentally perceive that to be coming from a credit repair company, even though it passes the postmark check, it passes the signature check, it passes all the checks, but they're like, wow, why are we getting tens of thousands of these kinds of dispute letters every month? So it hasn't happened very often, but I think the reason why some of our clients have gotten that, this is just with TransUnion, by the way, is they didn't sign their letter. So we made a change in that letter, just so you know. We're at the very bottom. All letters say this, no matter what bureau you're sending it to. It says that I personally sent this letter, and that's a game changer right there. So we have not seen anybody having any experience with TransUnion sending the letters back. But if we were to pull those handful of customers, I promise you the reason why they got that is they never signed their letter. I'm not exactly sure what the cause of this is, but I maybe once a week, sometimes twice a week, will get an email or a post on Facebook or YouTube, or it'll come into customer service and it'll say, hey, should I sign my dispute letter? Yeah. Why would you not sign your dispute letter? Well, think of what kind of a letter would you send to somebody and not sign it? So I think this, and I will credit or blame the credit repair industry for this, because somewhere along the line somebody got the idea of, well, you don't want to sign your dispute letters. And another thing that might trigger that is that when dispute letters come from credit repair companies, they're not signed. It's that rare case when, say, you've hired a credit repair company that's very white glove. They have a power of attorney. They're letting the credit repair company know that, hey, I'm a credit repair company, or I'm a law firm. I'm working on behalf of such and such client. Then that changes things a little bit. But yeah, sign your dispute letters. It's a really important thing to do. Sign your dispute letter. Include your driver's license, a picture copy of your driver's license. I'm sure none of our users are doing this, but I've heard stories. I never would have thought this was a thing. But as I said earlier in this live, I have a couple of friends who worked in dispute resolution. Both of them have been on this Facebook Live, and they have told me stories that literally people have sent in their driver's license with their dispute letter. You're supposed to send a photocopy of it. They sent in their driver's license. So yeah, don't do that. So what you want to do is sign your dispute letter, send them a copy of your driver's license, preferable, state ID is okay, passport's okay, and this is the important part, and you want a recent utility bill. Okay, pay stub is okay, something with your address on it, something with their address. So if it's a utility bill, gas, electric, whatever. It's got to have their name and address. It's got to have your name and address. It's got to be ideally less than 60 days. So why do they want that? Because they assume that a good portion of the population probably don't live at the address that's on their driver's license. I'm one of them. I never changed it because we're moving again in a couple of months, so no point. And also, they know that utility bills, pay stub, cover page of your bank statement, insurance statement, those have your recent address on them. Relatively easy thing to change. Going down to the DMV to change your address on your driver's license, not so easy to do. Okay, let's see. I'm on round 8. Nothing has been deleted. Okay, so yeah, if nothing's been deleted, that means that your creditors have said, you know what, everything is on the up and up. Everything's reporting accurately. Nothing's coming off. It's going to stay there for the entire 7 years. Now, let me qualify that a little bit. You can do a couple of things. Number one, you can wait 6 months. Maybe some of the accounts that you disputed might get archived. It happens. Maybe the collection company sells the debt and the next one doesn't report it, or maybe they just get rid of the debt. They don't want to have anything to do with it anymore. They can't verify it. Let me throw this back up here again. I want to get these items deleted. No, there's no suggested reason to put anymore. What do I do now? Yeah, there's no suggested reason because you're done. There's really nothing more. Unless Versio finds an error in the import process, it's done. There's not really much. There's nothing new you can argue. There's only so many things that you can dispute on an account. So what you want to do now is, even though you want these accounts to be deleted, law allows them to remain for 7 years. For consumer credit, the only exception to that is bankruptcy, which can, if it's a Chapter 7, can remain for 10 years from the filing date. So here you have some options. If it's collection debt, settle it if you can. If it's in the budget, you can settle it. You can work out a deal. Nothing wrong with going to a collection company and saying, if you owe a grant, say, hey, listen, I got $300. Let's do this now. One thing you might consider doing is say, hey, listen, I will pay you X percentage of this collection, but in exchange, can you do me a solid and delete this from 3 credit bureaus? Some of them will, some of them won't. It just depends. But here's the good news. Contemporary scoring models, I'm talking about Vantage 3, 3.0, 4.0, FICO version 8, 9, and 10. All of them ignore paid collections. So this is if you have collections. Now, unfortunately, the older FICO models don't do that. For example, if you want to buy a home, that's a 20-year-old FICO model. It's very outdated. It doesn't care if you've paid collections or not. They pretty much have about the same weight. So if you have debt with original creditors, Amex or somebody else, Barclays, a repossession on a car, try to settle it. Okay, now they're extremely unlikely going to delete that from your credit report. I would say that probably almost never happens, but settle the debt. It's a great thing to settle debt that you owe. Not only does it end that potentially adversarial and a dangerous situation. What I mean by that is you don't want creditors to sue you. It's a bad, and I'm not saying that they're going to, but they certainly have that right. And then that's a whole other mess. You've got now you might have a judgment. Now it won't appear on your credit report, but that's the least of the problems. The big problems are they can levy your bank account. They can garnish your wages. So it's not fun stuff. So it's always good to have something into place and settle debt when you can. The good news is, if you want to look at the upside, is you didn't spend hundreds, $800, $1,000, $2,000 paying a credit repair company to figure out that your creditors were able to verify that the information is reporting accurately. So next, if you can, settle debt and start and build credit if you haven't. Okay, let's see. Gregory with a question. What if I have a couple of charge-off? One will expire, scheduled to be removed next year, and one in 3 months. What should be my next move? What do you mean by if it's coming off? If it's been 7 years and it's coming off, or it's coming off in 3 months, or whatever it is, the timeline here, I'm not exactly sure if that's the case. But listen, hey Gregory, if they're getting ready to fall off, you've long recovered from those. Derogatory credit, if you were here earlier when I mentioned when I was talking about the auto pay, and one of the reasons why you don't want to get a 30-day or a 60-day is nothing hurts your credit more than something that just happened, because it's an indication of what might be going on financially. So if you're missing payments recently, FICO and Vantage Score are gonna look at you and go, oh, what's going on with Gregory? Is he got problems? Lost his job? They have to adjust the score to reflect that. But having said that, when you've got derogatory credit that's 36 months old, you've largely recovered from it. To answer your question, what should be my next move after the 7 years? Well, you don't really have a move after 7 years. It's gone. It's gone from the credit report. Credit reports don't have memories. They don't know what used to be there. They can only tell you what's there right now. So when these things drop off, they're gone. The best move always is continue to pay bills on time, honor your financial obligations, and use credit wisely. That's always the best move. Okay. Any other questions? We are coming up. Man, that was a fast, 45 minutes? We're going over the 45-minute mark. Fantastic. Any other questions before we wrap it up? Okay, let's see. Does Credit Versio offer services for folks that live in Georgia? Yeah, Tiffany, awesome question. There's 2 states that don't allow credit repair service, Georgia and South Carolina. The answer is, well, yes, we're not actually offering credit repair service. We're not a credit repair company. We're software. This is DIY. So we don't have the same rules and regulations that a credit repair company would have in Georgia and South Carolina. In fact, we got a lot of people from Georgia using Credit Versio. I imagine it's probably for that reason. But yeah, nothing to worry about there because we are not a credit repair company. Okay, Gregory says, thanks. I've been building it with positives for the past year. Awesome. Listen, the thing that really builds your credit up, I know everybody, especially if you're coming from out of derogatory credit, I was there years ago. Everybody wants it faster, wants it sooner, wants the score to be higher. Totally get it. Credit scores are one of those things that, yeah, there are some moves you can make, like being added as an authorized user. Credit repair is one where you can shave years off the time it takes to get a good credit score. But you're not really going to get into those elite scores, high 7s, low 8s, mid 8s, eventually, unless you just put in the time. It's one of the reasons why you don't see a lot of people under the age of 35, 40 with all 3 credit scores comfortably in the 800s. It just takes time. One of the metrics in your FICO score, it's very close in your Vantage score, is age of accounts and average age of accounts. What's your oldest file? What's the age of your average file? It's 15% of your score. It's a good chunk. It's enough. What is that? It's about 80 on FICO. That's about 82 points of the points you have available that you can influence. So yeah, there's a chunk of points that are sitting there that you're not going to get when you're in your 20s. You just don't have enough time there, or God forbid, you had to do what I did. I'm 51 years old. I went through a whole bad credit time during the Great Recession. I didn't start rebuilding until I was probably 40, 41, 42, I think. So a lot of my accounts look very, very young. It's one of the reasons why, I know a lot about credit. I've got great credit, but I don't have credit scores in the mid 800s like John Olsheimer has, or even my partner David, who sits across from me, who's quite a bit younger than me. He didn't have to rebuild like I had to at the age of 41. So, my scores sit high 7s, low 8s, depending on what scoring model that I'm looking at. So I finally got back, but it took a little bit of time. So Gregory, just keep doing what you're doing. Let the derogatory stuff fall off. There's no reason to dispute something that's getting ready to fall off in a couple of months. So there's nothing to be gained from that. Okay, that is it for me. Thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate the questions. If you are on Facebook and you see this as a rerun, or you come back and look at it, you got questions, post them. I go back. Always circle back around. I answer questions. So thank you so much for being here with me today, and I look forward to seeing you next Wednesday. Take care.